If you will not tell me, I will hurt people.
Stop! Don't do it! The people!
That is one big pile of
Superman.
Superman 4 is by far the worst Superman film. It looks cheap with its reused effects and laughable fight scenes, but the worst part about it is that it's Christopher Reeve's last Superman film. Yet on paper, it had a lot of potential. Christopher Reeve actually helped write the story himself. As Cold War tensions between America and the Soviet Union escalate, Superman grapples with not being allowed to intervene in human history, and also his own wish to be part of humanity. He also deals with leaving his hometown behind, and having to move on from the wisdom of the Kryptonians that taught him so much of what he knows. His arch-nemesis, Lex Luthor, also returns, with a plot to create a supervillain called Nuclear Man, and to try and get rid of Superman for good. Meanwhile, Lois Lane also returns, and there's a hostile takeover at the Daily Planet, which Lois and Clark also have to contend with. So with all that going on, how did this film end up being such a disaster? Let's take a look. I'm Firelink Frontier. On this channel I discuss films, TV shows and video games. In my last video I discussed Superman 3, and while I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bad film, it's not great either. But Superman 4 on the other hand is definitely a bad film. So let's take a look at what went wrong. As soon as Superman 4 starts off, you can already tell that something's off. Even the title sequence looks cheap, compared to the first two films. Look at the difference. One's crisp and clear, and I'm really not sure what that is. The budget for this film was considerably smaller than the other three films, at just $17 million. Compare that to the $55 million for the first film, $54 million for the second, and $39 million for the third, and it really shows in the film. The film's producer, the Cannon Group, suffered a major financial crisis before the film's production, and as a result there were many budget cuts made. Take a good look at this shot, because it's going to be reused over and over again throughout the film. Luckily the film's only 90 minutes long, and there's apparently 45 minutes of deleted scenes for this film that were removed after negative test screenings. I mean, what kind of scenes are so bad that they need to be removed from this film? Oh dear. Yeah, there's another Nuclear Man, before the one we see in the film, and it's something alright. I don't know if he's supposed to look like Bizarro, but it got cut out anyway. Superman saves a group of Russians from a space station. Oh, and he's able to talk in space, by the way. That's just one of the many plot holes in this film. He then returns to Earth and begins making plans to sell up his family home. I'm sure that shot would have made the bat disintegrate along with the ball, but never mind. We're then introduced to this great character, Lex Luthor's nephew, Lenny Luthor.
Oh no!
I'm not really sure what this character is, and I'm not sure the writers do either. Lex Luthor's in prison, and they manage to lock the guards in the car, and it flies off the edge of the cliff. It must have been too expensive to film the explosion, so it happens off screen, and it just cuts to a reaction shot. Oh, and they survive, by the way. I have no idea how. Lois and Clark are down in the underground, when this train driver collapses for some reason. Again, I don't know why. That's the entire context right there. We then see this terrible shot again, as Superman flies along the track. The people aren't even looking at where he's supposed to be, as he flies past. One of the only things I like about the film is it still has little moments like this.
But our subway system is still the safest and most reliable means of public transportation.
It may be a bit silly, but compared to a lot of the superheroes now, where everything has to be dark and moody, it's kinda nice to see Superman being the figure of hope that he's supposed to be. Clark returns to the Daily Planet, and there's a hostile takeover by news tycoon David Warfield and his daughter Lacey Warfield. David Warfield begins making changes to the Daily Planet, and he wants a more sensationalised approach to journalism. We're then in a school all of a sudden, and this scene has some awful re-recorded dialogue.
I tell you who I'd write a letter to that would do some good. No, Superman!
What accent is this? Maybe some Americans can enlighten me in the comments. Lex Luthor is trying to steal one of Superman's hairs. Yes, you heard that right. Because he needs Superman's DNA to create Nuclear Man. For some reason throughout the film, Lex Luthor keeps saying Nuclear Man. I guess no one decided to correct Gene Hackman. So in the middle of the day, Lex Luthor smashes the glass, triggering the alarm, and steals the strand of hair. Also, this strand of hair can hold 1,000 pounds, but it can be cut with bolt cutters apparently. He then gets away, I suppose. The film doesn't show us. It just cuts away from here, and how he escaped is left to the imagination. This newspaper headline actually made me laugh for some reason. Superman then restores Lois's memories, with his weird kissing superpower. That's the plotline from the end of Superman 2 undone then, I guess. Oh, never mind, he made her forget again. Why does he have this power? And how did he discover that he had it? And they decided to redo the flying scene from Superman 1. Only much worse. I mean, what is this? It just looks so bad. Superman goes to the UN and tells them that he plans to rid the world of nuclear weapons. Won't this have some unintended effects on the world? The threat of nuclear annihilation was what was stopping the Cold War from breaking into real combat, but I don't know. I guess that now Superman is intervening, he could try to stop it. Now I have a question for my majority American audience. What's wrong with this scene here, at the UN? Let me know in the comments below. Superman then flies about catching nuclear missiles, and he puts them in a big net in space, and fires it into the sun. I don't even know what to say about that. I mean, who made this giant net? Lex Luthor is continuing with his plan to create Nuclear Man, and he's joined by Professor Slughorn from Harry Potter, and Porkins from Star Wars. He then breaks into an army base. Again, we don't see how. And he puts Superman's DNA into a missile and fires it at the sun. Nuclear Man is then born, I guess. Oh, he looks pretty cool. Oh, never mind. I mean, what were they thinking with this? He also has Lex Luthor's voice for some reason. And just like the shark in Jaws the Revenge, Nuclear Man also roars, by the way. Those films both came out in 1987. That must have been a bad year for film. Actually, I just took a look at what came out that year, and there's quite a lot of good films, like Predator, The Running Man, Full Metal Jacket, The Living Daylights, which I quite liked actually. I know it's probably not a lot of people's favourite Bond film, but I quite liked Timothy Dalton as James Bond. Oh, and even RoboCop came out that year. Yeah, I love 80s films. But anyway, back to Superman 4. Nuclear Man loses all his powers when he's taken out of the light, so he'd be a pretty hopeless villain anyway. Couldn't Superman just throw a towel over him or something? So they fight, and the effects here really look awful. Look at that. And it's not because it's from 1987 either. Superman 2 looked much better than this. They fly to China for some reason, and Nuclear Man begins blowing up the Great Wall of China. But not to worry, Superman uses his new power. He's able to rebuild the wall with his special wall rebuilding ability. Yeah, he can do that for some reason. It really annoys me when they just add random powers like that. Superman gets called overpowered a lot. But I think if you define his powers clearly, what he can and can't do, then that would make the story much better. Nuclear Man then turns Superman into an ice cube. Then he flies into a volcano, causing an eruption. But Superman saves the day. Superman breaks out of the ice cube and cuts the top off a mountain and fires it into the volcano like a cork and blows out the lava. Has anyone ever said that sentence before? I feel silly even saying these plotlines out loud. Nuclear Man also picks up the Statue of Liberty, for some reason, and wants to throw it at Metropolis, but Superman is able to stop him, but not before Nuclear Man can use his long nails to scratch him. This gives Superman some sort of fever. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be radiation sickness, but doesn't Superman's power come from the radiation from the sun? Anyway, at this point there's only 22 minutes left of the film. So Superman is cured, and Nuclear Man sees a picture of Lacey Warfield, and decides that he needs to find her. When Superman confronts him, we get this terrible line.
Stop! Don't do it! The people!
Poor Christopher Reeve. It's so sad that this is his last Superman film. He then traps Nuclear Man in a lift and puts him on the moon. Nuclear Man then loses his powers. Until the sun comes up, that is. What is that noise? This fight really is awful. It's all in weird slow motion, and it just sort of looks like they're wrestling. Nuclear Man then brings Lacey to the moon. She can breathe in space somehow, but not to worry. Superman then pushes the moon in front of the sun, so Nuclear Man loses his powers. Surely this would cause massive tidal waves on Earth, but the film doesn't seem to care. Superman then saves Lacey and throws Nuclear Man into a nuclear reactor. Lex goes back to jail, and Perry White takes over the Daily Planet from David Warfield, and that's the film. It really is the worst Superman film. Even with Superman 3, there were some redeemable moments, like Superman fighting the evil version of himself, and the memorable horror moments that I discussed in my last video. But with this film, there's really nothing to like, except maybe Christopher Reeve. But even then he has some bad lines in the film. The whole film is filled with plot holes, terrible effects, and questionable dialogue. It was panned by critics and only made $30.2 million at the box office. The last line in the film, "See you in 20, almost came true, as no Superman film was seen again for 19 years, until Superman Returns was released in 2006.
On the brink, with good fighting evil. See you in 20.
What's especially annoying is that there could have been a decent film made, especially around the basic plot points of the film. It was just executed terribly, with its cut budget. Christopher Reeve stated that he regretted his decision to be involved with the film, saying, "Superman 4 was a catastrophe from start to finish. That failure was a huge blow to my career. The film is a mess, and killed the Superman franchise for 19 years, and I definitely think it's the worst of all the Superman films that I've seen." Before I end the video, I'd just like to thank everyone for their support on my recent video about Superman 3. I'm really blown away by it all. I had about 20 subscribers before the video, and now suddenly I have over 100, and it's received over 17,000 views. I've got loads of comments from you guys and I really appreciate it, so thank you to you all. If you want to help the channel grow, then please consider subscribing. I'm Firelink Frontier and thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.